Imagine that one day you are summoned before the government panel even though you haven't committed any crime or been in with one. You are repeatedly questioned about your political views, accused of disloyalty, and asked to incriminate your friends and associates. If you don't cooperate, you risk your losing job. This is exactly what happened in the United States in the 1950s as a part of a campaign to expose suspected communists named after its most notorious practitioner. The phenomenon known as Marxism destroyed thousands of careers. For over a decade, the American political leaders trampled democratic freedom in the name of protecting them. During the 1970s, active but small Communist Party in the United States, its record was mixed. Crucial roles were progressive struggles, labor and civil rights in also the Soviet Union. From the start, the American Communist Party faced attacks from conservatives as well as liberals that criticized its ties to the Soviet regime. During World War II, USSR allied against Hitler. Some Americans actually supported the Cold War. Domestic communism came to be seen as a threat to national security. Eliminate the threat. Even turned into the longest-lasting, most widespread episode of political repression in American history. Spurred on network, bureaucrats, politicians, journalists, and businessmen, the campaign widely exaggerated the danger of communist subversion. The people being harassed and suspected of holding copies or associated with if you had a manner award or signed petition against the communists. Starting in 1919, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover used the resources of his agency to hunt down such supposed communists and eliminate them from any position of the American society. And the narrow criteria Hoover allies used to screen federal employees brought some Harvard studio universities, car manufacturers, employees, some practical tests, and the men and women who worked for them. Meanwhile, Congress conducting its investigative body like the House of American Activities Committee. If cooperated, they could be jailed or more commonly fired and blacklisted. Ambitious politicians like Richard Nixon and Joseph McCarthy used such hearings as a prison weapon, accusing Democrats of being deliberately losing China, the communist bloc. McCarthy, a Republican senator from Wisconsin, became notorious by fronting ever-changing risks as communist within the department. Egged on by the administration, he continued to make outrageous accusations reviled McCarthy. The Korean War broke out, vindicated, and she became chair of the Senate Parliament's subcommittee. Increase. And finally turned public opinion. McCarthy's colleagues in Senate censure. Less than 3 years later, probably from alcoholism. McCarthy is amended as well. Long-lasting. The director opposing them. Creates. Even the Supreme Court appeared the test of the witch hunt, condemned serious violations of constitutional rights and national security. Was domestic communism an actual threat to the American government? Perhaps. But the reaction to it from Adamus, and the demagogues appeared in uncertain times to attack unpopular minorities in the name of patriotism. Little. The presidency of the United States of America is often said to be the most powerful presidency in the world. But of the US accused of misusing that power, only one has left office as a result. The result deserves a remembrance for modern scandal that ended his presidency. Find out. Disgraced President legacy on trial in history. Richard Nixon. Order. Now, who's the defendant today? Some kind of clock? No, Your Honor. This is Milhouse Nixon, the 37th president from 1969 to 1974. Hold on. I'll be a number waiter for President deserve. Where President Nixon resigned, the good of the nation and the pardoned President Hitakawa. He resigned because he is about impeached. Nixon's crime is posed. Your Honor, the Watergate is one of the grossest abuses in presidency power in history. Nixon's man broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters to wiretap the offices to grab data on opponent for the re-election campaign. It was a solution that did not agree. Additionally, he rounded up everything covered up when lying about it. Yeah, it was for the good of the country. He did so much during his office. He could have done so much more. It's a scandal jeopardizing his accomplishment. Accomplishment? Yes or no? Did you know it was President Nixon who proposed the creation of an Environmental Protection Agency and the National Environmental Policy Act into law? Not to mention Endangered Species Act, Marine Mammal expansion of the Clean Air Act. Sounds pretty progressive, hardly. Next president's campaign caused certain voters to fear the resentment of the civil rights movement. Speaking of civil rights, it's pretty surprising to amendment banning gender-based discrimination education and desegregation school occurred peacefully. 18. So instead he called the protesting the Vietnam War, a war he had campaigned on ending, but he did end it. He ended 2 years after taking office. Meanwhile, his campaign had sabotaged previous presidential peace talks, as in saves Vietnamese holders for better terms. I imagine it didn't materialize, so he protested. More US troops, or a million Vietnamese died for nothing. A presidential can interfering for the negotiations in the true reason. It is, Your Honor, a clear violation of the Logan Act of 1799. I think we've forgotten President Nixon's main foreign policy achievement. It was he who normalized ties with China, forcing economic ties continue today. Are we so sure that good thing and his coup in Chile that replaced democratic elected Allende is brutal military dictator. The fight against communism, tyranny, violence, religion, communism to begin with, and President Nixon could not Pinochet's regime being anti-communist didn't neglecting poor. He proposed guaranteed basic income for all. Still, concept today, and even today, comprehensive healthcare just can't pass 40 years later. I'm but agribusiness with crop. Your Honor, President Nixon may have violated a law or two, but was the real harm compared to in office? The harm was democracy itself. The foreign ideas claimed to promote abroad that whatever reasons these ideas undermined to the law of their job. Many politicians compromise some principles to achieve results, but law breaking and cover-ups threaten the public. Those who do so may find their entire legacy tainted, and history is put on trial. Imagine you're watching a runaway trolley bearing down the tracks straight toward 5 workers who can't escape. You happen to suddenly switch a diver's trolley onto the second track. Here was the problem. That track was just one. What do? Do you sacrifice one person to save 5? This is a trolley problem. A version of escape drama philosophy Philip Hood devised in 1967. It's popular because it forces us to think, have to choose. No good choices. Do we pick the actual best outcome or stick to more prohibit causing someone death? In one survey, about 90% of respondents said it's okay to risk one worker died to save 5. Another study included virtual reality simulation of the drama. Similar results. These judgments are consistent philosophical principle against the moral correct decision. Maximize the well-being. Greatest number of people. The 5 lives outweigh being achieving required condemning some already to utilitarian view. Full problem. This time, standing on the bridge approaches. Now the second track. There is if we push him over, his body will stop Troy. But he'll die. To utilitarian decision, this is actually saying lose 1 life to save 5. But in this case, only about 10% of people said that it's okay to throw the man onto the track. Our instinct tells us deliberately causing someone's death is different to die as collateral damage. It's just pure wrong, as they explain. This intersection between us is psychologically interesting about the third problem. The dilemma reveals that what we think right or wrong depends on factors. Logic. For example, man microphone 2% of the bridge. So watch comedy clip before doing further experiment. The virtual reality is more sacrifice men than women. Researchers subsidy brain activity of seeking through the classic and bridge versions. Both scenarios activate in conscious decision making and emotional. But emotional response is much stronger. So but Newton is making this analysis more intense. For example, driver-less cars may have to handle choices like causing small accidents to prevent larger ones. Meanwhile, government are researching autonomous military drones, making decisions about casualties, high values. 건장, 샴푸, 건장. Simon designed test children who are struggling in school in France, designed to determine which children required individual attention. Their methods from the basis. In research, the hypothesis is cognitive ability like verbal reasoning, visual spatial skill, reflected in an underlying general intelligence. What G factor Simon Binet designed a battery of tests to measure each disability to combine the single score. What just each age group stages reflected how they perform relative to their age. Dividing someone's score by their age, multiplying that by 100, yielded intelligence quotient or IQ today. A score of 100 represents the average of a sample population, with sample scoring within 15 points. Simon Binet said the skills assessed general intelligence. No single definition of general intelligence, and that left the door open. People to use it in service of their own preconceived about intelligence. What studies have identified those who need it. In other ways, often service deeply flawed ideologies. One of the first large-scale implementations occurred in the States during World War I. They used the IQ test to sort recruits, screen them, officer training. That time, many people believed in eugenics. The idea desirable or undesirable genetic trait could and should be controlled in humans through safety. There are many problems. This line of thinking among the idea of intelligence not only fixed and inherited related to the person. And the eugenics scientists use the result of military initiative to erroneously screen the certain racial bloods intellectually to others. Without taking account, many of the recruits tested were new immigrants to the who lacked formal education or English, creating erroneous intelligence hierarchy of ethnic groups. The intense eugenics IQ testing influenced not only science but policy as well. In 1924, the state of Virginia created policy allowing for sterility of low IQ scores. The United States Supreme Court upheld it nothing that can authorize the murder children based on low IQ. Following the Holocaust in civil rights movement, discriminatory use of IQ tests were challenged of most unscientific grounds, trying to begin to environmental impact on IQ. For example, as IQ tests periodically recalibrated in the 20th century, new generation scored consistently higher on all tests each previous generation. This phenomenon, known as the Flynn effect, happened much too fast because the inherited evolution trait that caused by environmental education, better healthcare, better nutrition. In the mid-20s, psychologists also attempted to use IQ tests to evaluate things such as general intelligence, particularly skillful in depression and psychiatric conditions. These diagnoses relied on evaluating subsets to determine IQ. A practice-related research fund does not yield clinically useful information. Today, IQ tests employ many similar design elements and types of questions better to identify potential bias in tests to diagnose psychiatric conditions, but similarly using subtest scores is still sometimes used to diagnose learning disabilities. Scientifically baseless ideologies that doesn't test itself worthless. It does good job. Problem solving is set out to, but isn't the same thing as measuring potential. Though there are complicated political, historical, scientific, and cultural issues of that IQ testing, more and more researchers agree on this point. Rejected notion individual can be categorized by a single numerical score. Speaking of questionable testing practice, get standard tests altogether. Finally, these tests actually measure or learn more about information. Optimus use workshop test is this video.バカかお前、本当に。
When Reverend Jim Jones founded the People's Temple in 1955, few could have imagined its horrifying end. This progressive religious movement rose in popularity and gained support from some of San Francisco's most prominent politicians. But in 1977, amidst revelations of brainwashing and abuse, Jones moved with several hundred followers to establish the colony of Jonestown in Guyana. Billed as a utopian paradise, the colony was more like a prison. And when a congressional delegation arrived to investigate its conditions, Jones executed his final plan. On November 18, 1978, 909 men, women, and children died after being forced to drink poisoned clay pit. That grisly image has since been immortalized as short-form slang for single-minded, cult-like thinking. They drank
Cool.
Today, thousands of cults around the world. It's important to note two things about them. First, not all cults are religious. Some are political, therapy-based, focused on self-improvement, or otherwise. And on the flip side, not all new religions are what we refer to as cults. So what exactly defines our modern understanding of cults, and why do people join them? Broadly speaking, a cult is a group or movement with a shared commitment to a usually extreme ideology that's typically embodied in a charismatic leader. And while few turn out as deadly as Jonestown or Heaven's Gate, which ended in a mass suicide of 39 people in 1997, most cults share some basic characteristics. A typical cult requires a high level of commitment from its members and maintains a strict hierarchy, separating unsuspecting supporters and recruits from the inner workings. It claims to provide answers to life's biggest questions through its doctrine, along with the required recipe for change that shapes a new member into a true believer. And most importantly, it uses both formal and informal systems of influence and control to keep members obedient, with little tolerance for internal disagreement or external scrutiny. You might wonder whether some of these descriptions might also apply to established religions. In fact, the word cultus
All cults often describe the people who cultivate worship by performing rituals, maintaining temples. In time, it came to mean existence. Religion began as cult as they grew. A modern cult contrast separates rather than providing guidelines for members to live their lives. To financial asset, living arrangement, cults of demand obedient human leaders, hosted in highly persuasive people, motivated money, sex, power, or all three. Where cult uses personal charisma to attract and forward further expansion, like a pure scheme. Earlier members recruiting new ones. Cults are skilled at to target unfortunate areas, undergone some personal and professional roles. Here we thought of something taking most. In fact, more than 2/3 of cult members are recruited by friend and family or co-worker whose invitation are harder to refuse. Once in a cult, members are subjected to multiple forms of initiation. Some prior natural inclination mimic social behavior. Other methods may be intense, using techniques of coercive persuasion involving guilt, shame, and fear. And in many cases, may be willingly submit they belong to attain promised reward. The cult environment discourages critical thinking that everyone around you more than absolutely fate. The internal conflict known as cognitive dissonance. Each compromise makes it painful to admit you've been deceived. Most cults then cults stunt their members' psychological and emotional growth, particularly for children deprived. Nevertheless, many cult members eventually find a way out. The religion probably have got a full pack due to exposure of scandals. May be hard to identify it, and for some, believe no matter how strange. Less irregular activities, views intervene. Believing in something should not come at the cost of family and friends, and if this sacrifices relationships or morality for greater good, the most are exploiting you for their own. 5 or 6. Player 2 wins. Let's try twice more. Here player 1 wins. And here it's player 2. Who do you wanna be? At first glance, phone number will be highest, but actually player 2 has an approximately 50% chance of winning each match. One is the possible combination you can get by rolling 2 dice and then each player wins. These are possibly the yellow die, the blue die. It's the possible combination when you roll both dice. Player 2 victory in itself. That doesn't. Even if you 36 game as player 2, you win 20. Like a player 2 win approach theoretical probability, writing down all possibilities. Yes.